Thank you, Sasha. Before I start, I want to convey to you regards from Igor Primorac, who was not able to be with us today. I met him 2 weeks ago, so he's very sorry not to be here. Igor Primorac. He was with us 4 years ago, and I hoped to have him with us here now, but it proved to be impossible, so just to mention this. I added these some very basic provocations to the title of my talk because I think it is very basic, but you'll see in a way it's going outside of the mainstream framework. So it's regarding the changes in the meaning of the concept of divorce. We have some of that already. Both war and victory underwent radical changes lately, and those changes are coming to the point of losing the content, losing the meaning of both war and victory. All definition of the victory used to be very clear, and we mentioned that already from the very outset when Asa said it's the rule of the game, saying that it's closing the game, the rule of closing, how to close the game. Of course, the victory has been connected in a way always in all its versions, mission accomplished, whichever, with what the goal of the war is supposed to be. So in that sense, it has to be connected with that content. But you have here the classical Clausewitzian definition of the victory as compelling the enemy to accept your will. The important part of that is that victory ends war, one, and is doing that by giving the right to the victor. How it works? It works to end the war by giving a solution to a conflict, and so functions as a rule of decision-making. That solution would be that the victor takes the right and the defeated side would lose. But it functions in two ways, and actually we had in mind so far in the conference the first one. It's constitutive, but it could be regulative also. As a rule of decision-making process, it can work as a constitutive rule or as a regulative rule. More of that later. On the other side, victory is accompanied with capitulation. It's coming in a pair. You cannot have one without the other. And there are some conditions for valid capitulation, about which also more later. But the point was that the state of affairs after the end would be some kind of restoration of the previous state of affairs, presuming that starting point or something before the starting point of the war was the normal state of affairs, which should be restored, or should be restored in a way in which it should be taken as normal. It's in a way still the same concept, but in another way it's not. It's becoming something different, and the question is what the difference is. We have on the other side in the concept of war also changes, and there is a widespread belief that the concept of war has changed lately, that the contemporary war is different. It's either asymmetric, very contemporary, or total during first part of 20th century. I'm putting here that it's not clear why this generalization had been made, because it's actually not true. Both asymmetric and total wars you can find throughout the history. asymmetric wars were a very clear characteristic of colonial wars. In Africa, for example, during colonial times, and before that in conquering Americas, etc., the colonizers recognized very clearly among themselves, but they didn't recognize the other side as a valid other side. It's purely asymmetric. And total wars also, Napoleonic wars were total. Punic wars 2,000 or maybe more than 2,000 years ago were in fact entirely total wars. Another possibility, and I will skip, I should perhaps skip that entirely, is that we may enter a state of affairs which resembling very much, and I have a strong feeling that it is something like Peloponnesian War, which destroyed Greek civilization, opening the room for what the history afterwards was for Romans come and introduce the civilization based on the principle of power instead of Greek civilization, which was based mainly in the principle of beauty. And Peloponnesian Wars came, as Thucydides describes that in the first pages, because Athens became too strong and too arrogant. But actually, during the rest of the book, it's becoming more and more visible how the destruction of that civilization was the result more of the arrogance than of the distribution of power, because the stronger side was defeated, and the weaker side got what we can call a Pyrrhic victory, and the whole result was actually very, very disastrous for the subsequent, not only centuries, but also millennia. Of course, there is the question, what's war? And I am offering a very minimal, I call it ultra-minimal definition of war, as a conflict which cannot be solved otherwise, but at the same time, and that's the focus, at the same time, there is a consent that it has to be solved. War can be avoided only by amputating the second part of this definition. If the attacked side surrender immediately, there wouldn't be war. The important part of this is that there is a deep disagreement of what the result should be. So there is a conflict that cannot be resolved by using, by means of reasons, by debating, and things like that. That's not only in war. In the process of voting, we have the same issue. Votes are not reasons. Votes are expression of power. But it cannot be solved even by the way of voting. It has to be solved by the force, and at the same time, both sides decide not to abandon that mission or whatever the goal is. And obviously, there is a very deep disagreement of what the result there should be. There are some other, this definition, however, doesn't tell much about the essence, what war really is. There are other very important distinctive features of it, and in subsequent slides I will enumerate some of them. What is, as per definition, temporary state of affairs? It has as its final goal the peace. But peace is not only in my opinion, it might sound scholastic, the peace is not only the goal of the war, but it's the cause, the main cause of the war. The disagreement of what the peace should be is the main cause of the war in the first place. So what's the peace? I'm offering, again, a minimal and very neutral, I hope, definition of what the peace is. I'm not using value-laden terms like democracy or Christianity or Western civilization or whatever they could be used. It is a specific articulation of the distribution of power. A specific articulation of the distribution of power in a society defined by or through laws, constitution. Those laws, constitution and other rules are what the articulation actually there is. So while war is normatively temporary, peace is supposed to be eternal. It functions as if to be forever. It's the way how laws or rules have to function. Otherwise, they couldn't function if they would be taken as temporary. So peace is taken to be eternal, sub specie eternitatis, but it's on the normative level, on the factual level, it might be different. It depends on the strength of the fabric of the peace, I think. The most important characteristic or feature or property of the peace is that it's giving predictability and control of future time. That is the worth of it. It gives the possibility and opens the room for established expectations which make the normalcy of life. So when you have those established expectations, you know what you can do, you can plan, you can make life plans, you can act with some probability that or some chance to succeed in what you do, etc. Established expectations are possible in the peace. But in war is different. War implies, as of definition again, or presumable temporary suspension of many civil laws. And that aspect of suspension is very important. It's what makes war to be so different from peace. The normalcy of the life containing the predictability and normative control of future time, which we have in peace, is lost in war. It's absent there. And absence of the threat of laws, of sanctions, opens room for many possibilities and for the ugliest part of human nature to come up and become visible, although those parts like sadism, visible very much in torture, that might be interesting for Uwe, normally is not part of any military purpose. I had a student in the United States once who has had a presentation about torture, and he made some statistics and concluded that almost 100%, 99% of all acts of torture have no military purpose at all. But the frequency by which such things occur shows that the context of war opens the room for those parts of human nature that will be subdued by laws, by those established expectations, and when the normalcy of life could appear on the surface now. So that's, in conclusion, the context of war introduces some aspect of Hobbesian natural state of affairs as unpunished realization of illegitimate desires. Those desires exist now as they exist in the case of suspension of laws, but now they are subdued, and in war they are freely exercised. Unpredictability is a very important feature of the war. Suspension of civil laws introduces this feature because there is no predictability, no planning there. But this feature introduces uncertainty in two different ways. It's uncertainty regarding current issues, unpredictability of what happens next on the tactical level. Who will succeed in a tactical operation on the spot? removing normalcy of the life, if there is someone who is coming to kill you tomorrow night, etc. But there is other uncertainty there, which is much larger, and that is the uncertainty about the end of the war. And that's dealing with the victory. It's not in advance clear who will win, who will get the right to articulate what is the rights and what is the articulation of the distribution of power in the society. And that's important for our issue of victory, because if the victory is known in advance, there is no war there. That's why military interventions, however large they could be, are actually not wars. Of course, there are some plans, like in business, which is also connected with many of risks, not so high risks as war. There is planning, but the planning is in the context of uncertainty and unpredictability. Irreversibility is other feature there, and it's visible at the very start. It's a crucial part when war comes to start. It's impossible to start it. Usually, traditionally, it's been a declaration of war, but we discussed that in my class many times. The point in time when this irreversible point occurred usually is much earlier than the point of breaking the war. For example, it's been very much visible when President Bush declared that we, Americans, are intervening on very false assumption, as we know now, in Iraq, with or without our allies. At that point, it's become impossible to stop what is coming, despite the fact that what is coming as the event was based on a decision, a free decision, as a matter of choice. But at that time, after the point of irreversibility, is not a matter of choice anymore. And we discussed when that point in time occurred, and many would say it's in this particular example, it must be somewhere in the previous year, in October or November 2002, after which nobody, not the president, not the Senate, could change what has been already decided. That starting point has been produced by accumulation of causes to make war inevitable. And that's very often lost in analyzing the war. But my point is, when the war begins, at that point it's unavoidable. At that point, that doesn't mean that it's unavoidable in the whole time. But at that point, there is no possibility to stop it. And that fact is independent of the will of those who made the decision which leads to it. The other point is our point of victory. It's the ending point of the war. So we have a period of time which is defined as temporary, starting and ending, and those two points of starting and ending both are irreversible in a way. Irreversible in the sense that after those irreversible points, everything would change. Victory, the other irreversible point, functions there as a constitutive rule. In a normative sense, it's constitutive in the way that it doesn't allow grading. It's either or in that sense. The nature of constitutive rules are very interesting, very important. They create a huge part of what our reality is, institutional reality. That's the reality that exists there because we decided something, but after being enacted into the reality, there are facts like all other facts. The fact that I'm married, for example, is a very hard fact despite the fact that it's not a physical or chemical or any natural ingredient containing fact. And that's what victory is making. Like any other constitutive rules, it is making facts. It's making that something will be real and something else that could have been real if the other side won isn't real. Constitutive rules are binding per definition, and that's why the victory has the logical structure of consent. It functions as a consent, and consent is what the result should be, the agreement or what the peace, that basic disagreement before and during the war disappears, and now we have the agreement of what is the peace and what is right and what is wrong and everything else. We have the consent, instant conflict. So victory is a mode of conflict resolution normatively required for the purpose of establishing binding rules such as laws, etc. Those rules are creating the new peace, offering a new definition of what normal life is, which is different from what the normal life would be if the other side had won. Implications of the victory as constitutive rules are many. The most important and most neglected one would be that it's clear what the victory is. In the way how Searle defines a constitutional rule and institutional fact, it's a precise definition of what counts. And that's what the victory is giving. What counts, what is the reality under normal empirical conditions. So if I am giving a promise, it functions under normal empirical conditions, but it's binding and it's creating a new fact within the reality. Normal empirical conditions in context of war is some initial equality, which is connected with a viable prospect to success, the absence of which is indicating a radical irresponsibility. We discussed that a little bit earlier, and I suppose Uwe will talk about that more, but it's utterly irresponsible to start something that is not having any whatever chance to success. And that's initial equality there is what's making the war to be a game of decision making. If someone is rebelling with a prospect to succeed, it might become war out of that. If there is no prospect of succeed, it wouldn't be. From that follows reciprocity of opposing warring sides, and more important, mutual respect of enemies, implying that our enemies are not criminals as we are not criminals or shouldn't be criminals, normatively speaking, in the eyes of our enemies. And from that follows Walserian prima facie moral equality of combatants. But this part of this first part, prima facie, has been neglected hugely in text by, for example, Jeff McMahon or David Roden. They lose this part prima facie and take it as if Walser is claiming that the moral equality of combatants taken everything in considerations. And that's the demarcation that gives the clear demarcation line between jus ad bello and jus in bello, which is accompanied by many kinds of immunity. Many kinds of immunity. We are talking of mostly or only of immunity of non-combatants, but immunity is much richer concept. There is the immunity of commanders, of authorities. There are many fine-grained kinds of immunity which are accompanied with this scheme. However, war can function as a regulative regulative rule, which is just stating a factual establishment of a state of affairs by which a war ends, without any formal endings. It's very common, I think, in history. It's not real peace, but truce. We have very old examples. The truce might become a solid peace if it lasted long enough. For example, in the example that I'm giving here, Chile, in a very unjustified way, took a part of Bolivia and Peru and kept it for almost 200 years now, blocking off Bolivia's outlet to the sea. Now it's accomplished fact. The other example we may mention, for example, East Prussia. There is not much sense, at least, to talk about that, despite the fact that it's obviously based on ethnic cleansing. What's victory today, however? Now the victory is becoming, changing its character, is becoming, or taken that it should be winning the hearts and minds of the defeated party. In a way, winning the hearts and minds is, according to Gabriel Blum, a part of the definition of asymmetric war, from which follows that jus post bellum should be more than mere jus victoria used to be in the past. What does that mean? When can we talk about victory and capitulation in such a context? Are there still valid conditions for a valid victory? The traditional approach implied at least two following conditions: no annihilation of the enemy, of the defeated, but also no humiliation of defeated side. Kant would add no punishing also. Those who know Kant now know very well why Kant is saying that. We may skip that, which implies a very important normative necessity of an honorable defeat to be possible. So in traditional way, there was a way to be defeated in an honorable way. The defeated should retain some independence and sovereignty with themselves even after being defeated. But if the goal is winning the hearts and minds, this is obviously not the case. What should be retained with those who are defeated? On the contrary, we are taking an active stand, a responsibility and care for the other side, and that's what's the other side. The concept of the other side is entirely unclear. It can mean two radical different things. It's been taken as if the other side should become part of us or become like us. Even that is not entirely new. We saw that in Christianization of Europe and in many other cases. But you are warring with someone for whose hearts and minds you are caring, aiming that they would become like you and part of you. Quite different situation is if the other side should remain what they were from before. And capitulation should secure precisely that. So the first implies a normative need for unconditional surrender. But the concept of unconditional surrender is a very spurious, very sinister conception, I would say totalitarian one. The second meaning something that is very important to perceive, that is the readiness to accept the defeat, not only by the defeated, but also by the victors. Victors should accept the defeat of the defeated side and allow them to capitulate in an honorable way. Whose hearts and minds? It's obviously the hearts and minds of attacked side. the hearts and minds of attacking sides is of no concern for attacked ones. The attacked ones are not at all interested in hearts or minds of attackers. They are interested in defense, not in something like that. So this approach of winning hearts and minds distorts heavily the concept of defense and also self-defense. It's making defense blurred and irrelevant in a way. It's making a shift in its very concept. It's moving the central part of defense from self-defense to defending what's worth to be defending. To defend what's worth to be defended, and if that's the case, anything that could be interpreted as worth to be defended could become cause of the war. If you don't believe, ask Susan Rice. New approach to victory is having other issues that I think I may perhaps skip because there is no, in that ultra minimal starting definition, that there is a dispute about something that cannot be resolved by other means, but at the same time there is a resolution to the decision to come to the resolution. There is missing here. And I don't see how it could be established that there is this disagreement that should be resolved, and it cannot be resolved by other means, etc. And I'm coming now to what's the focus on my main point, victory or success. I think some clarifications may be in order here. It can be done in much more details here. I think it's not proper to say that successful avoiding a war, which is the best thing that can be done, is a victory. It is a success, but not a victory. It may be victory in a metaphorical sense, as when we say that we won the river in the case of flood. It is a success. If we succeeded to avoid the war, then won't be the war at all, so there won't be a victory also. Winning in preventing the conflict, not allowing the causes of war to accumulate enough to cause the war, this is also a success. So what would be the victory in winning hearts and minds scheme? It seems to me that it's having heavily eschatological feature. I think I told this before, the deep disagreement on what the result of the war should be implies that peace can be very different. And I am adding the last part, which is important, and still morally sustainable. So there are many possibilities. It's what I am having here as my standpoint is Kantian standpoint, but differentiating very clearly moral universalism from political particularism. Politics and matters of happiness are not universal. And that's demanded or required by moral universalism, which requires us to respect others in making their own plans, including political plans. So there is no way to define or describe peace in advance. And the other deep feature there is that the war is the matter of the whole freedom, part of which is tamed in legitimate freedom within the rules like constitutions and laws, giving predictability, etc. But also the other part of the freedom which we have lost by exiting the natural state of affairs. A quite different case is police. Police is having a very different articulation. There is no initial equality there. There is no, how to say that, there is no sense to talk about prospects of success. The success has to be normatively guaranteed. The responsibility is divided totally asymmetrical. The criminals have no right to defend themselves. They don't have the right to counterattack. They have a duty to surrender. So that's entirely different from a police, from a war case. And in police action, proper way to talk is to talk success, no victory. So when we compare war and police action, we may see that there is no much sense in saying that police won, or that it cannot be, normatively speaking, it cannot be defeated. Defeated police will be losing the ground of laws and normal situation. But it is quite proper to talking of its success or failure. And if this difference between army and police disappear, so would the difference between victory, which can be rather different from any sensible success. Victory is not necessarily success in any viable sense, and success and victory and talking about the victory becomes something obsolete and not needed anymore. It's becoming a prevailing jargon in the West now. Other problems are rules. For example, in that Wolzer's paper that Peter mentioned at the outset, can good guys win? There is the issue if good guys fight justly, and how can you guarantee that they win? To win, it might become for them to break the rules. But which rules? And there's the most important part of it. Rules have to be determined in advance. They cannot be introduced ad hoc as they need them. If they are not established from before, they actually are not real rules. One of the implications of this is the criminalization of war, which blurs the distinction between warfare and police action, dealing with many issues like freedom, culpability, or autonomy, sovereignty, non-culpable ignorance, etc. And in the situation of absence of world government, it seems to be awkward to take seriously that you may just pretend that that there is a possibility of policing the whole world and make a legitimate inequality in a way in which it is within the state, where police have all the rights and criminals have none. That situation requires world government, which is not existing. It might be impossible. Sasha Pavkovic might say something about that more, I suppose. And we have this asymmetry in justification as a precondition of asymmetric wars. One of hidden features of just war theory is that the war is just for one side and unjust for the other side. It's very much visible in Grotius, or how do you pronounce that in English? Grotius. There is a place in Grotius saying that a king who would attack someone who is stronger would behave politically responsible. But what that could have with the supposition that war is, per definition, attacking unjust side because of something that unjust side has done to make something wrong, and the war is an act of correcting that wrong. The implication is actually, precisely this, very much visible in Jeff McMahon and in less degree David Rodin too, that soldiers fighting on the just side or in a justified war are analogous to police officers using justified force or the individual engaged in justified self-defense, and the other side, the opposite. The problem of non-culpable ignorance becomes a humane catastrophe in such a case. You would have those who sincerely fight for their cause, believing not only that they have some chance to succeed, but also believing that they are fighting for the right or just cause. But in prospect of losing, they would be proclaiming to fighting for something that was not just from the beginning, not that they lose the right to articulate what the right is, which is very different. So proportionality, I warned about the time, the need to tailor, that's something that Asa talked more earlier. I will skip that. That prolongs the realization of the final goal, realization of the ending of the war, and in the end we have the situation which really seems to be sinister, that if the situation, if this is the description of the situation, the success gets in trouble as well as the victory. And reduced to the bottom line, it implies that what might be the characteristic, if we take from big enough distance and try to be entirely objective, we may see something that might be the characteristic of contemporary asymmetric war, the situation in which two police forces fight each other, treating each other as criminals, and one or both of them, regarding their representation, being ad hoc self-defensive militias or forces, and treating other side as criminals might be labeled or named with different words like terrorists, usurpers, aggressors, crusaders, whichever. So there is no victory there, only what follows.